Hey guys, back again. So, for this unit, kind of what we've been doing is we've been looking at how the Cold War has impacted different parts of the world. You guys looked at how the Cold War impacted Europe. What was next? You looked at Stalin. You looked at how the Cold War impacted Korea. And then finally Latin America with the stuff we did on Cuba just before. So now we're going to talk about how communism impacts China and how the Cold War plays out in this particular part of the world. So here we go. So, for starters, when we talk about the Cold War, we need to be talking about communism. And we know that communism is based on the idea that industrial factory workers overthrow rich factory owners, and then the workers become part owner themselves and they share in the profit, and the general public controls the means of production. So the question becomes, in a society that does not really engage in industry in any significant way, in this particular case, China, how does communism apply to China if they don't have factories and things like that? And the answer is you take all the same principles as classic Marxist communism and you apply it to agriculture. Okay. So now there are rich, farm owners and there are poor farm workers. So it's the same principle just applied to agriculture. So this is the idea that peasants should kind of also be the owners of these farms that they're working on. And this will create this classless society that is the hallmark of communism. So that's how communism works in China, and that's the vision. And it is the vision of this guy, Mao Zedong, who is the leader of communist movement in China, and this is how he sees this working. So the other important thing to remind you guys of always with communism, especially, is any any communist movement that is successful is based on the support of the poorest classes of people in that society. Okay. So any society where the vast majority of the people are poor, um, that is kind of a ripe situation for a communist movement. Okay. So that's kind of the situation in China, and that's what allows Mao to kind of exploit this situation. The idea is that he's going to gain the support of the peasant classes, the poorest classes, the people who already have nothing, and he's going to say, follow me, and I will fix all of this, and I will create a society where you are respected and you can succeed and you can kind of you can live life the way everybody else does. So that's kind of his message. So there's a couple of important things we need to know about Mao. Mao is one of the most notorious leaders, um, of all time, and he's famous for a few things. The thing that puts him on the map is what's called the Long March. So Mao's communist group is kind of battling the nationalist party called the Kuomintang, um, for control of China when he's kind of coming up. And the Nationalist Army has the Communist Army almost surrounded. And under cover of darkness in the night, Mao leads his troops kind of, and he begins what's called the Long March, which was a retreat where the Communist Army was running away from the Nationalist Army, and they march on foot 6,000 miles. So that's far. That's like walking from New York to Los Angeles and back. That's still not even 6,000 miles. You'd be a little short. So, just to give you an idea of what kind of massive undertaking and what an incredible achievement and accomplishment um, this is what puts him on the map. And the thing that helps his popularity is that he's out on the front lines of this. Mao is leading this march. So he's not just calling the shots from some faraway place, directing his armies around. He's down there walking with them the 6,000 miles. So this kind of gains this helps him gain the respect of a lot of people, and all the peasantry that he comes across during the course of this long march, he gains their support also. So the march is intense. A lot of people die on this march, and it's needless to say, it's a very daunting task and a significant undertaking of kind of human will, but it makes his group more powerful and more popular as they go because the peasants are kind of joining along with them as they march. So this is what puts Mao on the map, and kind of this is the first thing that starts to create this mythical kind of identity around Mao. That kind of helps him become as popular and as legendary in China as he will become. So Mao's also known for a couple of other important policies. The first of which is called the Great Leap Forward. So Mao feels that China is not, kind of, producing as much food as they could, and there's no industry to really speak of. So he launches a program called the Great Leap Forward, where he basically creates giant communes into giant farms that are, owned by the group together, collective farms, and forces all of the people onto these farms to perform agriculture. And then the next part of his idea is that in their free time, they will create basically homemade steel mills in their backyard, and they will start to produce steel. And this is going to be the beginning of industry in China on any kind of significant scale. The Great Leap Forward is a giant failure. It results in mass famine. First of all, the government, lies about how successful this kind of this policy is with regard to food production, and a lot of people think that China is doing a lot better than they really are. Fast forward, the impacts of this lie and the policies brought forth by the Great Leap Forward result in the deaths of tens of millions of people as the result of famine. The Washington Post has it at 45 million people. I mean, I don't know. I'll put them on it. I'll credit them as the source here. But that sounds like a lot of people. But you'll see other reports. It's tens of millions. So if 45 million people is accurate, I mean that's almost 6 Holocausts. So when we talk about mass death, that's just kind of puts it into perspective. Mao's other, famous policy is called the Cultural Revolution. And long story short, Mao, as he kind of continues to govern in his later years, starts to feel that China is losing its kind of communist spirit. And he launches the Cultural Revolution, which is an attempt to kind of renew the communist spirit in China and also to kind of maintain his own control over the country as a whole. So some of the hallmarks of this Cultural Revolution is he's going to eliminate political opponents. He's going to enforce strict control over the people. And another part of this is going to be the creation of what's called the Little Red Book, which is a little book that all citizens of China will be strongly encouraged to carry with them. And it basically outlines some of the basic principles of the Communist Party. And it's basically just it's basically your card carrying identification as a good Chinese communist. If you have this book and you're following its rules and so on and so forth, that means that you are kind of, you're on board with Mao and you're on Team Mao. And anyone who kind of is rejecting the principles of this book or refusing to carry it, they could be identified as political opponents, and those are the kind of people that disappear in the night. So that's just kind of the deal. Long story short, Mao is one of the most ruthless dictators of all time. More people have died on his watch than Stalin or Hitler, and we're splitting hairs here, but these are just a bunch of terrible people. Mao is another one. And it's important to know kind of what his impact on China was. So when we talk about how did the Cold War impact China, some of the things that Mao did is part of that kind of discussion. So for the worksheet today, you guys are going to take a look at a few different documents covering Mao's policies. You look at the Great Leap Forward. You look at a document about the Cultural Revolution. And then you'll check out a document about, really why these things failed and kind of what the negative outcomes were for China as a result of these policies. So use those documents to complete the worksheet. And as always, I'm around if you guys need any help. All right? Later.